Chapter 69. Rimuru. Even after all those royal audiences I gave, my schedule was absolutely packed. Now it was human guests I was entertaining: diplomats, nobles, merchants, adventurers. Our nation had become a magnet, drawing in delegations from every corner of the world. Some of the more formal parties had arrived nearly a week prior, while others trickled in daily, following the scent of opportunity and perhaps a touch of curiosity. Not all of them were invited, either. Quite a few were merchants who had caught wind of the growing excitement around Tempest and decided they wouldn't miss the festivities for the world. Their presence added even more energy to the streets. You could see it everywhere: smiling faces, colorful carts, packed taverns, and the hum of foreign tongues. Interestingly, the visitors who had arrived earlier had started to play host themselves, guiding the newer arrivals, pointing out scenic spots and local delicacies, acting like they'd lived here for years. It was amusing. Even some of the more composed royal envoys couldn't help but look around with wide-eyed wonder, as if they had stepped into some hidden realm forgotten by time. At first glance, it seemed my hopes were bearing fruit. The dream of turning Tempest into a thriving tourist destination wasn't so far-fetched after all. Still, we had limits. Our current infrastructure could comfortably host around 3,000 nobles. If we counted commoners, merchants, and adventurers, we could stretch to maybe 10,000, though in terms of high-end lodging, we were definitely approaching capacity. Tempest's hospitality had charm, but when dealing with kings, queens, and heirs to royal thrones, charm alone wasn't enough. They expected refinement, flawless service, exquisite cuisine, and, of course, impeccable security. So, we planned accordingly. Every noble was given ample space, their quarters chosen to afford both comfort and distance, avoiding the kinds of territorial disputes that could arise from putting the wrong guests too close together. Security details were quietly tightened, and our intelligence network worked around the clock. It wasn't paranoia, just prudence. After all, many of the guests were unfamiliar to us, and not everyone came with pure intentions. I sighed as I glanced over yet another set of papers. At this rate, I wasn't sure who the festival was meant to be for anymore, the people or me. But I kept smiling. Mjalmile was a really reliable guy. It went without saying that Ren, Testarossa, and everyone working under them deserved great praise, but when it came to good customer service and making sure our guests left satisfied, Mjalmile was my go-to man. With him managing the finer details, I felt confident that our hospitality was in expert hands. All things considered, we were off to a pretty good start. Okay. Keep it up. That I will. Leaving the rest in Mjalmile's capable hands, I turned my attention to our most important visitors. We were currently in the meeting hall, preparing to greet the next wave of dignitaries. Ren and Testarossa stood at my side, poised and elegant as always, their presence lending the room a calm, collected atmosphere. Meanwhile, Shuna and Xian were busy with all sorts of prep work. Catering to such a large crowd meant meticulous planning, after all, and they were both perfectionists in their own way. Gabble and Karob were just as buried in their own tasks, putting the final touches on the exhibits for the festival, ensuring that everything functioned flawlessly and looked good doing it. And as for Seal, she was back home, taking care of the kids. Since I wasn't dealing with dangerous monsters or rival nations at the moment, there was no need to put on the usual, "I am stronger than you," aura. I didn't need to dominate the conversation with sheer presence. This was diplomacy and hosting, not a show of force. So, I didn't need my entire staff looming behind me like some military display. Besides, in a nation like ours where everyone from dragons to goblins had a seat at the table, the old species-based hierarchies didn't really apply. We weren't interested in solemn rituals and overbearing pomp. No, we were building something better. I was, of course, in my human form, dressed up specifically for these formal meetings, both to project power and display our nation's prosperity. Personally, I couldn't care less about that kind of show. Being a slime would have been so much more comfortable, but I'd long since given up arguing that point. None of my advisors were willing to budge on the matter, especially Ren. Still, I could understand their reasoning. Appearances mattered in diplomacy, especially with nobles from the Western nations. Thankfully, most of them were polite enough in their greetings, reserved, but respectful. Then, in the middle of the introductions, the King of Bloomend arrived. He looked exactly as I remembered him. A kind, approachable man with the air of a storybook king, middle-aged, affable, and quietly dependable. Just seeing him helped ease the tension in the room a little. It seems that a certain Viscount Kazak who had the nerve to act rudely toward me met with a fitting punishment. Not that I lifted a finger, he'd committed several crimes beyond just being insolent. Honestly, it served him right. I couldn't help the little smirk that crept onto my lips at the thought, which, of course, didn't go unnoticed. Ren immediately shot me a quiet glare from beside me, an unspoken reminder to behave like the dignified queen I supposedly was. I offered her the faintest shrug before turning back to my guest. The rest of the meeting with King of Bloomend went smoothly enough. We agreed to save the official discussion for another day. For now, I simply outlined my vision, transforming Bloomend into a key distribution hub for the global economy. He listened attentively, nodding along, clearly intrigued by the possibilities. The very next day, as if the world had conspired to test my stamina, another major figure arrived, none other than Gazel Dwargo, the Dwarven King himself. "Well, Rimuru, here I am," declared Gazel as he dropped onto the cushioned seat across from me with an audible whump. "My first journey by carriage in far too long. I'm exhausted," still as imposing as ever, though clearly not too exhausted to start helping himself to the refreshments. Without hesitation, he reached straight for the tea and snacks on the table as if they had been placed there by divine decree for him alone. "Whoa there, don't take mine too, all right," I said, just a moment too late. In a flash, the final donut, my donut, vanished into his mouth. I had been saving that. Apparently, the formidable king of the dwarves had a sweet tooth to match his legendary drinking habit. Honestly, there's no end to what this man will surprise you with. "Ah, no need to sweat the details," he said smugly, sipping his tea like he owned the place. "If such trifles still bother you, you have much left to learn." Much left to learn how, exactly? You're the one stealing my snacks, old man." I gave him a deadpan stare. He returned it, completely unfazed. "And thanks to the chiefs raising a hue and cry," he continued, "we ended up with a whole caravan of carriages. It stretched on endlessly, like a parade. All your fault, Rimuru." I didn't even dignify that with a response. Instead, I gracefully lifted my own teacup and mourned the fallen donut in silence. As he explained in great detail, the journey here from Dworgen normally took a day on winged horse. Since this was an official state visit, however, he wasn't allowed to go with the Pegasus Knights alone. It wasn't just because of security concerns, either. Gazel would be seeing nobility from around the world, and as king of the mighty nation of Dworgen, he needed to show he was a military power. This meant having to pack multiple changes of clothes and such, along with administrators and attendants to help dress him properly. It made his entourage a more than decently sized crowd. Gazel and I exchanged a knowing look as we both nodded in agreement, like two conspirators caught in the act of mischief. "Honestly," I said, setting down my teacup, "some of these nobles act like the world's ending just because a few carriages ran late." Gazel chuckled, arms crossed proudly. "Bah, if a few extra horses and a delay rattles them, they're not fit to rule anything." We both nodded again, in perfect sync. That's when Ren spoke, calmly, quietly, dangerously. "Indeed," she said, her voice soft and unassuming. "It is truly fascinating how thoroughly harmony can be achieved when both parties unite in their refusal to follow proper formal decorum." I felt a chill. Gazel raised an eyebrow. "Was that an observation, Your Majesty?" Ren replied with a polite bow. "Nothing more." She turned her eyes to me next. "And of course, my lady, it is only natural to prioritize personal comfort over royal expectations." The emphasis on comfort made me straighten a bit. I cleared my throat. "We're just trying to keep things relaxed, you know." "Friendly." Ren smiled. "Ah, naturally. After all, trouble often begins with comfort, and blossoms fully when protocol is gently set aside." "Oof," I muttered. Gazel leaned toward me with a grin. "This one always like that." "She's holding back," I whispered back. Ren, who absolutely heard us, offered a prim little curtsy before stepping back. It appeared that attending the festival wasn't King Gazel's only reason for coming. No, the true purpose revealed itself. His posture changed slightly, still casual, still that usual confident bearing, but now with the weight of a king seeking answers. "So, Rimuru," he began, his voice dropping just enough to make things serious. "That business with Hinata, you claim it ended in a draw." He didn't say it outright, but I caught the edge in his tone. He didn't believe it. Not fully. I offered a wry smile. "That's the official story, isn't it?" Gazel didn't blink, just stared. I sighed, knowing there was no brushing him off. "Fine, I'll give you the truth as much as I can." And so I told him. Carefully, reluctantly, truth, wrapped in silken layers of omission. I explained our duel, the atmosphere of tension, the misunderstandings, the subtle shifts in battle, and how it ultimately ended in a temporary truce. I made sure to keep sensitive details secret. I see, Gazel said, his face unreadable. So it was as serious as expected. I gave a noncommittal nod. Let's just say it could have been much worse. There was a long pause before he grunted. You've grown strong, Rimuru. Strong enough to be feared. Even by those who claim to be allies. Quote. Is that a warning? I asked, arching a brow. Just advice, he said with a smirk. The stronger you get, the more delicate your position becomes. Wise words, coming from him. I met his gaze. I know, that's why I'm choosing my truths carefully. He let out a laugh. Hey, just don't forget who your friends are, Demon Lord Rimuru. After Gazel's parting words and a brief moment of peace to enjoy what was left of my tea, the next group arrived. Hey, pal, it's been forever and a day, ain't it? Well, guess what, I'm royalty now. Yom strolled in with all the bravado of a man freshly decorated and entirely too proud of it. His outfit was certainly flashier tailored, with a fancy cape and polished boots, but the swagger in his step and the grin on his face were still the same. A familiar boldness that made me smile despite myself. And clothes certainly make the king, don't they, Yom? I returned his grin with a graceful nod. Thank you for all your hard work. You've come far. Yom puffed up with pride. You bet, I've got a whole kingdom backing me now. Well, technically. Then, a calm voice drifted in from behind me, smooth, measured, and just sharp enough to cut through Yom's bravado like a butter knife. Although the garments are quite becoming, Ren murmured, her eyes narrowing slightly as she offered a curtsy so polished it might as well have been a blade. One might consider training one's manners to match. A king ought not shout before another loyalty. Yom blinked. I stifled a laugh behind a gloved hand. Poor guy, he could face down monsters and lead a kingdom, but Ren's quiet disapproval. That was a different kind of battle. He rubbed the back of his head and chuckled sheepishly. Guess I got a bit carried away. Ren said nothing more, her point had landed. I reached out and patted his arm lightly. Don't worry, you're still growing into the role. Just try not to make Ren glare next time. For your own safety. Falmouth, a nation with a long and storied past, had fallen. In its place rose a new kingdom, born from the ashes of its former self. Its people had found new purpose under the leadership of the champion Yom, who was now recognized as their king. To mark this rebirth, Diablo Ever the dramatist had chosen a new name for the realm, Farminus. And to fully embrace the image of renewal, Yom had styled himself Yom Farminus. Seated at his side in the grand hall were two magic-born Gruchith and Majoran. The pair served as his personal guards, constant and unwavering. Although, in truth, Majoran's role was no longer that of a mere bodyguard. She was now Queen. Lady Rimuru, she said, stepping forward with poise, allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Majoran Farminus, wife of the king. It is a pleasure to see you again. She performed a graceful curtsy, lifting the hem of her refined gown ever so slightly. It was the kind of gesture that came naturally to someone confident in her place and polished enough to make even highborn nobles feel clumsy by comparison. I nodded approvingly. The pleasure is mine, Lady Majoran. You wear your new title beautifully. Behind me, Ren gave the slightest tilt of her head, her violet eyes narrowing. A lovely display, she murmured just loud enough for me alone. Though I do hope proper manners remain consistent even beyond the formalities. Her tone was gentle, but the implication was clear. While Ren never raised her voice in front of others, her protective instincts were sharp and her standards sharper still. Majoran, unaware of the comment, returned to Yom's side with a satisfied smile. Farminus had stepped onto the world stage with surprising grace. Now the real test would be whether they could hold that position. By the time my talks with Yom's group had concluded, the sun hung high in the sky. Afternoon had arrived. The rush of activity hadn't faded entirely. Visitors still trickled in steadily, but most weren't eager to speak with me just yet. After all, the evening's grand celebration loomed ahead, and many were more focused on preparing for that than requesting an audience. Still, plenty of them clearly hoped to meet me at some point. I agreed, on the condition that they wait until the festivities were over. With that settled, a rare pocket of free time opened up in my schedule. So, as promised, I decided to make a quick trip to Anglesea to fetch Yuki. It also seemed like the perfect opportunity to stop by the Freedom Academy and bring the kids along. A festival of this scale, it would be a shame for them to miss it. Walking through the streets of Anglesea stirred a quiet nostalgia. It hadn't even been that long since I'd left, just a few months, but the familiar rhythm of the city and the memories tied to it gently softened my expression. Without even realizing it, my usual formality faded into something warmer, more relaxed. I found myself heading to the Free Guild headquarters in the heart of the city. Most of the adventurers were out on quests at this hour, leaving the building quieter than usual. I approached the front desk and gave my name to the clerk. She nodded quickly. "Ah, Ms. Rimuru, we've been expecting you. This way, please." Apparently, Yuki had already been informed of my arrival. It didn't take long to be led to him. "Hey, Rimuru, long time no see. Sounds like you've been through a lot, huh?" "Of course I went through a lot thanks to you." That thought I kept to myself, smoothing my expression into a serene smile. "That doesn't begin to describe it," I replied evenly. "I was attacked by Hinata, the Pharmus army invaded, and then the demon lords decided to summon me. It's been one thing after another. Calling it a lot is the understatement of the year." Yuki let out a carefree laugh. "Ha ha ha, I figured you'd sum it up like that, Rimuru." On the surface he was his usual cheerful self, but I could sense the weight behind his smile. "Let me introduce you guys. This is Kagali, the vice master of the Free Guild. She'll be running it while I'm gone." She entered with practiced grace, her every step measured. A beautiful woman, outwardly refined, dressed in a neat, businesslike suit. Blonde hair was gathered into a tight chignon, accentuating her poised features, and her clear blue eyes glimmered with intelligence. What drew my gaze most, however, were her ears, long, delicate, unmistakably elven. "Hello, Rimuru Tempest. Or should I call you Demon Lord Rimuru? My name is Kagali. It is an honor to meet you." Her voice carried smooth elegance, polished like a diplomat's. I smiled serenely in response, but within my mind CL's voice whispered with quiet precision. "Master, be cautious. She is utilizing a homunculus as a vessel. We should keep an eye on her." I did not let even the smallest flicker of suspicion reach my expression. Maintaining my regal poise, I inclined my head politely. "The honor is mine, Lady Kagali. I look forward to your capable management during Yuki's absence." After exchanging a few words with Kagali, I found out she was an explorer, and a good one at that. That stirred a memory. Hakura once mentioned a complex of ancient ruins lying within Clayman's former domain, untouched, uncharted, and possibly hiding something worth knowing. It was exactly the sort of place I wanted to see for myself, but having someone like her along would make the task both easier and more informative. CL's voice brushed through my thoughts, cool and measured. "Master, she is not to be trusted. Even if her knowledge proves useful, remain wary. Of course, she might well be an enemy one day, but enemies could still serve a purpose until the time came to deal with them." I offered Kagali a gentle smile, outwardly serene. "Lady Kagali," I began, "your reputation as an explorer precedes you. There are ruins within the lands formerly held by Clayman, places that have yet to be investigated. Would you care to accompany me in exploring them? I imagine your expertise would prove invaluable." Her blue eyes lit up, a flicker of intrigue beneath her composure. That was enough. Whether she thought herself manipulating me or not, I would be the one holding the reins. If she caused trouble later, I could always deal with her then. Kagali accepted without hesitation, her words measured but her eyes betraying a spark of interest. That was fine. I'd need to ask Milam's permission before venturing into her territory, but I doubted she'd object as long as I explained things properly. After saying our goodbyes, Yuki and I departed from the guild headquarters. The city outside felt strangely lighter, as if the future was already shifting into motion. I hadn't expected any of this, but now the ball was rolling. The ruins of Clayman's domain would soon be within reach, and I finally had someone capable enough to lead the charge into them. Honestly, I hadn't been sure who to enlist for such an endeavor. Few in Tempest had real expertise with ancient sites, so having Kagali step in as an overseer was more reassuring than I'd like to admit. It would have to wait until after the Founders' Festival, of course. Priorities came first, but the thought of venturing into those untouched halls stirred a quiet thrill in me. Who knew what secrets lay beneath the dust and stone? Forgotten magic, ancient history, maybe even some clue that would help me improve our own underground dungeon back in town. I allowed myself a small smile. Yes, once things calmed down, there would be much to uncover. Yuki, carrying a large knapsack, was eager to speak with me. Receiving that written invitation, he must have had time to prepare in advance, and judging by the size of his bag, he clearly intended to stay for several nights. "So, are you planning to bring the children along as well?" he asked. I inclined my head gracefully. Indeed, now that Hinata and I have reached an understanding, there is no reason for them to feel uneasy in Tempest. While there may be minor concerns, our security is more than sufficient. If we can safeguard the many dignitaries who will attend, then surely those 5 children will be no exception. Okay, in that case, go right ahead. Yuki smiled, his expression softening. They're a lot more devoted to studying these days, so maybe they're due for a break and a reward. A serene smile touched my lips. Precisely, they have endured much and applied themselves diligently. A festival is not merely a celebration for rulers and nobles, it is a time for the young to laugh freely, unburdened by duty. I should like them to experience that joy without a single care. I hadn't sent the children any advance notice. This visit would be a complete surprise. I kept quiet until I was certain it would be permissible to invite them, better that, I thought, than risk raising their hopes only to dash them if circumstances had forced me to refuse. They deserved joy, not disappointment. After a short walk, Yuki and I arrived before a familiar building, the stately Inglesea Free Academy. A brief exchange with the gate guard saw us admitted at once. Being accompanied by Yuki, the school's honorary chairman, smoothed the way considerably. The vice principal himself soon greeted us, leading us with respectful haste to a classroom. I opened the door with a serene smile. Good day, everyone. Have you been keeping well? Before I could even finish, a small form barreled into me with the force of a charging knight. Ah! I let out a soft sound of surprise, instinctively steadying her. Ms. Tempest, Alice cried, clutching at me with all the pent-up emotion of our separation. You've been gone for so long. Despite her sudden tackle, I couldn't help the gentle warmth that bloomed within me. I smoothed a hand over her hair, laughing softly in spite of myself. Ah, Alice, you have not changed a bit, I see. She's right, you promised you'd come in more often. Gale pouted, his hands on his hips. Yeah, Gale's telling the truth, I thought you forgot all about us. Kenya chimed in, puffing up indignantly. But I'm glad you're here now, Ms. Tempest. Ryota added with a bright grin, his words earnest despite his friend's complaints. Almost at once, Chloe slipped in beside them, her smile radiant as she clasped my hand. Welcome back, Ms. Tempest. Surrounded by their eager voices and sparkling eyes, I could only smile warmly. My, I appear to be on trial today. You have all grown more assertive since I last saw you. I knelt gracefully, so I could meet their gazes at eye level, and stroked Chloe's hair fondly. But I am delighted to see you again. You're as popular as ever, Yuki remarked with a laugh, watching as I was all but engulfed by the children. I'm a little jealous. That drew a round of attention to him. Oh, Yuki's here, too, Alice exclaimed, suddenly remembering. Kenya's eyes lit up. Hey, Yuki, you promised to fight me today, remember? Me too, Ryota added brightly. Right, our spirit force handling's improved a lot lately, Gale said, puffing out his chest with pride. Noticing Yuki seemed to make their smiles grow even wider. Kenya all but sparkled as he challenged him, and Ryota and Gale weren't far behind, eager to join in. If they truly had their powers under control, it was only natural that they would seek someone worthy to test themselves against. Ah ha ha, Yuki laughed, waving a hand in mock dismissal. You'd need to train another 100 years before you could beat me. I'll fight if you want, but not today, all right. Ah, why not? Kenya protested, stamping his foot. I placed a graceful hand upon his shoulder, steadying his bubbling energy with a serene smile. Sorry, Kenya, there is no time for that today. Huh, what do you mean? Chloe tilted her head, her confusion clear as her golden eyes blinked up at me. I looked right back at her, my smile gentle. Well, I wanted to invite all 5 of you to my homeland. We're holding a grand festival starting tomorrow. If you don't wish to go, that's fine, but hurry, we gotta get ready. All right, Ken, why didn't you tell us sooner? This is huge. Yeah, Ms. Tempest, how can you just say this out of nowhere? I can't wait. The children immediately sprang into action before I could even finish my words. Their excitement ignited like fireworks, and they scattered in every direction without wasting a single heartbeat. The decision, it seemed, was already unanimous. All you need to bring is a change of clothes, everyone. I called after them as they scurried off. There was no response, only a chorus of laughter, footsteps, and shouts echoing down the halls like a passing storm. Left in their wake, I could only sigh with amusement, smoothing back a strand of my hair. The teacher presiding over class at the time was understandably a little bewildered by the sudden commotion. His eyes followed the departing children until the door rattled shut behind them. That was quite the surprise, he murmured at last, sighing. They've never been quite that friendly to me. I covered my mouth with a soft laugh. Ah ha ha, you're doing a fine job with them, truly. They're a little better now than they used to be, but it takes a rare kind of teacher to wrangle the likes of those children. He shook his head ruefully. No, I imagine it's only natural. With them, one must prove strength before they'll truly listen. If I let my guard down, I dare say they might overpower me entirely. There's no doubting the magic they hold. Then, almost as an afterthought, his expression shifted. By the way, I studied him more closely. He wasn't someone I recalled. He must have been brought in after my departure. Oh, forgive me, I said gracefully, inclining my head. My name is Rimuru. I was their teacher before. I apologize for intruding upon your lesson. Recognition dawned in his eyes. Ah, so you are Rimuru. I suspected as much when the children addressed you as Ms. Tempest. My name is Klaus. The academy hired me as your replacement. He offered a bitter smile, bowing his head slightly. And you needn't worry about today. The vice principal warned me ahead of time that class might be cancelled for a while starting today. As Yuki explained, Klaus was once an adventurer, a hunting specialist with a rank of A-. Now approaching 50, he was already considering retirement before very long. Wait, you said you might even lose to them? They've gotten that strong? I asked, tilting my head ever so slightly. Well, what did you expect? They take pride in the fact that you trained them, miss. Yeah, Yuki added with a grin, if they managed to sneak up on me, maybe I'd even lose. I gave Yuki a polite smile, though inwardly I wasn't so quick to take his words at face value. He always had a way of exaggerating when it suited him. Still, if Klaus was the one saying it, then perhaps the children really had grown this much. And to achieve such progress in so short a time, it was impressive, undeniably so. As I pondered this, Klaus turned toward us, his expression firm and resolute. Sir Yuki, I have a request. What's that? Yuki asked. It is something I'd like to ask Miss Rimuru as well, Klaus said, bowing his head slightly in my direction. At this rate, I may soon find myself unable to prevail against them. They possess an advantage that extends beyond technical skill. But if we allow them to stop here, it would not be good for their growth. They must be tested further. I think they need an adult who can serve as a kind of wall for them. Yuki raised an eyebrow. How do you mean? It's simple, Sir Yuki, Klaus replied with quiet conviction. These children still have the potential to grow. I don't want them defeating me and becoming arrogant. What they need is someone beyond their current reach, an opponent who can guide them while still standing as a wall they cannot yet overcome. That is why I hoped we could provide them with someone capable of training them in true fighting technique. I folded my hands gracefully before me, observing Klaus. His tone carried no self-interest, only genuine concern. He wasn't afraid of losing to the children, he was afraid of what that victory might do to them. That, I thought, was the mark of a true teacher. It made sense. After all, each one of these children carried within them a high-level spirit, spirits powerful enough to stabilize the immense magical energy they had been burdened with upon crossing into this world. Until now, those spirits had simply been neutralizers, preventing the children's own power from tearing them apart. But as they matured, they began not only to withstand the spirits but also to wield them. With that came new possibilities. Their excess energy could be channeled, refined, unleashed. Spirit arts magic born of harmony between human and spirit would soon be well within their reach. And with such strength, they could no longer afford to grow careless. All right, so we'll want a good teacher along those lines, huh? But if we're talking someone stronger than you, Klaus, it'd have to be a current A ranker. Hiring someone that far up as a teacher might not be possible. Yuki's words were practical, but they carried weight. He wasn't wrong. An active A ranker would never settle for teaching duties when the world beyond offered far greater challenges and rewards. Retired adventurers, perhaps, but reliable ones of that caliber were few. The guild, too, would hardly be eager to spare its top talent for the sake of a single classroom. I inclined my head thoughtfully, a faint smile curving my lips. In that case, I said, my tone serene yet resolute, it may be simpler if I take the matter into my own hands. I am preparing to establish a school in my nation, and I believe I could arrange for these children to be taught there. Among my people, we have warriors of remarkable skill, B rankers and beyond, and one in particular who surpasses even myself in martial technique. The image of the old man came unbidden, stern, unyielding, and yet gentle in his own way. My own mentor, Hakuro, I continued. When it comes to the sword, his mastery is unmatched. If anyone can instill in these children not only the art of combat but also the discipline and humility required to wield power, it would be him. For a moment, the room fell silent. Even Yuki, always so calculating, seemed caught off guard. I allowed the quiet to linger, then added softly, should you entrust them to me, I will see to it that their training is conducted with the utmost care. Whoa, Yuki marveled, that actually sounds great. Would you mind taking over custody of them for a while, then? I inclined my head slightly, a serene smile touching my lips. Very well, if it will benefit their growth, I shall take them under my care for the time being. The matter was settled just as the children came running back, their cheerful voices echoing near the main gate of Anglesea. I guided them away from the busy road to a secluded clearing, where the flow of magicules was undisturbed. Extending my hand, I opened a transport gate with practiced elegance. It shimmered like a clear mirror rippling with light, no runes or circles required. Yuki gave me a sharp look, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. You really do these things too casually, Rimuru. I only smiled serenely in response, letting his words pass like wind over water. The children, however, didn't share his skepticism. They had long since grown accustomed to my abilities. Ms. Tempest, if it's that easy for you to use these gates, then come visit us more often. Kenya blurted out, his tone carrying a mix of complaint and earnestness. I paused, turning my gaze on him with gentle dignity. You are correct, Kenya. I have been negligent in that regard. I lowered myself slightly so I could meet his eyes directly, my tone soft but regal. I shall endeavor to visit more often, I promise. His expression brightened at that, and I allowed a small laugh to escape me. On the other side of the gate, I led Yuki and the children directly to my preferred lodging in Tempest, a secluded residence apart from the noble quarters, reserved for our highest officials and trusted guests. The atmosphere was calm, dignified, and private, befitting the reception of such company. Yuki excused himself almost at once, retiring to his room with his usual composed smile. Once he was gone, I turned to face the children, their expectant eyes fixed on me. I must apologize, I said softly, folding my hands before me with grace. There is still some unfinished work demanding my attention. You will need to wait until this evening before we can spend time together. Ah, the chorus of disappointment rang out at once. I raised a single finger to my lips, the gesture quiet yet commanding. Silence, I murmured, though my tone carried no anger, only the weight of authority softened by affection. Then, from within my robes, I drew a small pendant, its jewel gleaming faintly with restrained magical light. Holding it up, I let it sway gently before their eyes. I had thought we might use this for a game, but if your behavior proves unruly, I shall keep it to myself. The shift in their expressions was instantaneous. Curiosity and excitement chased away their earlier disappointment, and they leaned in as one, their eyes shining. That is better, I said with a serene smile. Now, allow me to explain how this little game of ours shall work. I let the pendant glimmer in the light, its charm catching their eager eyes. With a serene smile, I began. You see this pendant here? It serves as something of a free pass to all the festival's delights, beginning tomorrow. With this in hand, you may sample food and drink to your heart's content, and wander freely through any of the event halls. The children leaned closer, excitement flickering across their faces. However, I lifted a graceful finger, my tone sharpening just slightly. There is a limit. 100 silver coins, worth of enjoyment. Once you have exhausted that, the game ends. At that point, you must return to your rooms, and I shall have no choice but to assign you homework as punishment. They cried out in unison. I allowed myself a quiet laugh, the sound light and musical. Do not look so stricken. If you have been diligent in your studies thus far, I am certain you can pace yourselves wisely and make this last for 3 full days. Consider it a challenge of wit as well as appetite. Their faces brightened again, enthusiasm reborn in their eyes. So then, I concluded, holding the pendant out before them like a prize. Shall we see just how clever my pupils truly are? Let's do it. I bet there'll be so many rare things to see. Can't wait. Ken? Yeah, I can't. Thank you, Ms. Tempest. I'll buy something for you, Miss Tempest. Their voices overlapped, bubbling over with joy and anticipation. I smiled softly at their earnestness, the pendant warm in my palm as I placed it into their eager hands one by one. Each child nodded with bright, sparkling eyes, and I returned every gesture with a gentle inclination of my head. There is always a certain charm in this moment, I mused, the breathless anticipation that precedes a great event. For a brief instant, I considered telling them that Ramirez was in town, but thought better of it. That meeting could wait until after the festivities. For now, there was no need to hurry. Kenya and Alice, in particular, were already bursting with excitement, whispering to each other about all the things they would see and do. Their laughter and chatter filled the air, light and infectious. As for their daily needs, the servants at our lodging would tend to them without fail, leaving the children free to lose themselves in the festival's wonder. And me, I found myself quietly savoring the sight of their joy. Okay, everyone, if you need anything, simply ask the hostess in charge, understood? And though I doubt it will be necessary should you ever need to reach me directly, hold that pendant tightly and focus your thoughts on me. It will activate a messaging spell. Okay, they chorused, voices bright with enthusiasm. Their eagerness brought a faint smile to my lips. Seeing them so spirited filled me with quiet warmth. With everything in order, I realized my presence would only distract them further. Gracefully excusing myself, I left their room behind. All necessities were now settled. I had a little time before the pre-opening, so I thought to retreat to my chambers for a brief moment of repose. But the world had other plans. Lady Rimuru. From the shadows, Soe emerged, his voice low and steady as he leaned close. The hero Masayuki's party has arrived outside the town. I paused mid-step, golden eyes narrowing faintly in thought. So, they had finally reached Tempest. As I approached, my gaze fell upon a large wagon up ahead, swaying slightly as it rolled to a stop. Several elves were being helped down, their movements hesitant but their spirits lightened. I had already heard from Celine that they were the ones freed from that vile Orthrus ring. The wagon itself was finally made evidence that they had been treated with care after their rescue. On a smaller, covered wagon behind them, a young man with blonde hair sat in the cabman's seat, another man holding the reins beside him. So that must be the so-called hero, Masayuki. My golden eyes lingered on him for only a moment, his presence was not what truly drew my attention. From that same wagon, two figures emerged. One was Celine, her familiar form immediately putting me at ease. And beside her, the moment our eyes met, she broke into a radiant smile, one that pierced straight through the composure I always strove to maintain. My lips curved in a soft, involuntary response, though I kept the rest of my bearing serene. How I longed to speak with her this very instant. But first, there were other matters demanding a queen's attention. To be continued.